Well, yes, it was a pretty dramatic start to the NatCon conference here in Westminster. We had a speech from Jacob Rees-Mogg, was the first proper address, where he was talking about issues with immigration in the country, the problems with protectionism in the country, but it was interrupted very dramatically at the beginning by a man who came on wanting to talk to us all about the dangers of fascism. Now, he was bustled off the stage very quickly, but really I think that the woman of the moment is rising star of the Conservative Party, Miriam Cates, who did her opening speech this morning on what she perceives is the biggest danger to Britain, that is bigger than China, bigger than big tech, bigger than Iran, and that is the falling birth rate, the number of women just not having babies. And I'm actually here with Miriam Cates in the hall today. And Miriam, that was a really, really rousing speech, and you definitely had the audience on side. Do you really believe is it not an exaggeration to say that the birth rate is the biggest issue facing Britain?
Well, I think if we're concerned about our future beyond the immediate, short-term 5 to 10 years, then it absolutely is. And of course, it isn't just Britain that's facing a low birth rate. Countries across the Western world are facing very similar, and in fact, some countries in a worse position than us, like Finland, that I mentioned in my speech. But I think the temptation for politicians often is only to talk about the economy. And actually, we need strong families, we need strong communities, we need people to have children if we want to build a strong economy in the future. And I think sometimes we're too afraid to talk about the family because we're afraid of culture wars or afraid of feeling judgmental. But the point that I tried to make is that the state can't be neutral on these issues. We either favour having children and support people having children, or we don't. And I want to move to a culture where we very much do value children and people who want to be parents.
That's interesting what you say about the culture, because the sort of prevailing consensus is that the reason why women are choosing not to have children is simply because they can't afford it, because the economy is set up wrong. But from what you were saying this morning, it sounds like you think it's something deeper than that.
Well, I think that certainly is one of the reasons, and things like housing and student debt certainly mean that people have to become older before they're able to think about this. But I think it is a much wider thing, and it's about we don't value parenting, we don't value children, the way our tax system is set up, the narrative, in fact, that many politicians have about, you must get as much education to have the most fulfilling career that you can possibly have. And I'm not saying those things aren't good, of course they are. But actually, when you get to your deathbed, are you really going to say, I wish I'd spent more time in the office, or I wish I'd spent more time with children, or I wish I'd had children? These are fundamental issues of people's fulfilment and satisfaction in life, is having children and raising the next generation. And as politicians, we should be trying to create the conditions that at least make that possible for people if that's what they want to do.
Well, Jeremy Hunt, in his budget, was widely lauded for trying to do that, it seemed, by offering free childcare to women who wanted to go back to work. But from your speech this morning, it sounded like you don't think that is actually a particularly progressive policy. Can you just explain?
Absolutely, and I strongly disagree with that policy. And, whilst I completely agree with Jeremy Hunt that we should be investing in the first few years of children's lives, I don't think that's the way to go about it. I think, firstly, because, biology and psychology and research tell us that that bond with mum, especially in the first 2 years of life, is really important for lifelong fulfilment and lifelong security. And as a government, we shouldn't be trying to break that by saying to women, you can only have support from the state if you leave your 9-month-old in the care of a stranger. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with childcare, and there's some brilliant childcare workers out there, but fundamentally, if what we're saying as a country is that the role of women is to get back into the workplace and contribute to GDP, that really devalues motherhood and the unique nature of motherhood and what women can offer to their children. And it's those kind of things that just skew the narrative away from having children for their own sake, raising them as an investment in society, and towards us all just being contributors to GDP, which doesn't bring the kind of satisfaction that I think some people believe it does.
Well, thank you very, very much, Miriam Cates. It's really great to speak to you, and thank you for your speech this morning too. So that's it from NatCon for now, but we will be back in a couple of hours with all the latest, and we're expecting to hear Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, speak later.